Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller with Inner Integration. Today I want to talk about avoiding codependency, the fixer mode. One of the common traps of codependency, there's two of them that I see. The first one is the people pleasing. To me, that's what codependency is primarily about. It's about people pleasing in order to get a sense of approval from others. The second trap is trying to fix and heal other people who have problems. And that's the one that I'm going to focus on in this video. So this is actually quite dangerous. It kind of has this noble air, helping, fixing, healing people. And there's a time and space for all that, in professional jobs and whatnot. But when you're talking about a relationship, when you enter into a relationship with someone who has issues like alcoholism, addiction, narcissism, and you get in there and you try to help them and fix their problems, what happens is it's actually disrespectful to the other person who may not want to change at all. And it's their sole responsibility to change. It's not your responsibility. Even though you may know better, even though you may see the error of their ways and how they could have a much better life if they were to change this or that, that's not your responsibility. And trying to get someone to make changes in their life when they don't want to change is actually disrespectful. So how many of you fell into that trap before, and then got yourself into a relationship with an alcoholic, an addict, a narcissist, another toxic person who, despite all of your efforts, that person never changed. That person never healed. They never quit that bad habit. They never stopped abusing or manipulating or treating other people poorly. Right? So if you got into that, then recognize the behavioral patterns that got you in there. Now, of course, the abuse, the manipulation, none of that is your fault. Their alcoholism, their addiction to drugs or narcissistic supply, none of that is your fault. But what I'm saying is, if you want to take some responsibility for yourself so that you can empower yourself and not get into one of those situations again, that's the information I'm sharing here so that you can take care of your behaviors so that you don't then end up attracting that or getting involved in that again. So from now on, here's my main advice. From now on, every person that you meet, whether it's dating, friendships, co-workers, potential business contacts, look at that person that you meet and imagine that they are never going to change. Look at that person right here and right now and ask yourself, 2 years from now, do you want that person in your life? Imagine they never change a thing. They're the same person 2 years from now that they are right now. Do you still want that person in your life, right? Do you even want to spend 10 minutes with that person, knowing that they will never change, right? Let's just make that assumption. They will never change, and maybe some people do. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But just imagine that person is never going to change, right? So stop looking at them with those goggles of what you want to see or what you hope to see in the future. Imagine they're just not going to change. Do you still want to hang out with them? That's the question, and if not, then your answer is don't waste your time and energy. Just don't waste your time and energy. If the person ends up changing down the road, maybe you end up running into them and now they're living a different life and they tell you about their changes, and that's great, but you don't know that that's going to happen. So to save yourself a lot of energy and time investment and then getting into another toxic relationship, don't waste your time. The reality is that people can change, right? We can all change. It's a human characteristic, quality, innate possibility that we can all change. But the reality is that many people, maybe even most people, don't change. And when we're talking about a narcissist, a really toxic person, they don't change. I have never once in my personal life or my professional life heard of one narcissist, psychopath, sociopath who has ever changed. Not one. I've heard of quite a few of them who put on a really good show, who said all the right words, who pretended to change for a little while, but it always ends up coming up that nothing changed. They go back to the same behaviors. It was all a show. Maybe it lasted a day, a week, a couple months, maybe even a couple years, but they end up just being that same person again. And this became really obvious to me after the earthquake. I had mentioned in the last video that people's true colors really come out after a crisis, and I saw it immediately. Venus and I had to evacuate an hour after the earthquake happened. We went to the park where there were a lot of other people who were displaced from their homes. And we walked around for a while until I found half of a bench that was empty. And it was, an older couple. They obviously were affluent and they were huddled together talking. They were obviously evacuated as well. And I said to them in Spanish, would it be okay if I sat down over here? And of course I had Venus with me. And they were like, oh, and the woman said to me in Spanish, but he doesn't like dogs. And I just looked at her and I turned around and walked away because it wasn't even worth protesting. Like, you got displaced from your home. There's all these other people displaced. We just went through this massive trauma like an hour before. Like, you don't have to like dogs. I'm not trying to tell you gotta like dogs, but like, you can't share the bench with a person who has a dog. That person never gonna change. If that didn't shake them up, no chance. Me having any sort of conversation, not even worth it. Like, what am I gonna do? Try to educate them on the right thing to do? No, I'm not gonna waste my time and energy. I'm gonna move on to where I'm wanted, to where I'm appreciated, to where it's nice to be around other people. The other situation that I saw was my Airbnb host. Everything was great until the earthquake hit. Immediately took a picture of all the damage. If you've seen my previous videos, you saw that giant mirror in the background. Like, that mirror is taller than me. It's probably like 6 feet tall, right? That mirror went crashing down. And luckily Venus and I were on the other side of the apartment when the earthquake happened, because that would have killed her. It probably could have killed me or hurt me, and it wasn't in any way, shape or form attached to the wall, number one, which it has to be. If you have a bookshelf and a mirror, anything like this in a seismic zone, you should secure that sort of thing. And her response was, oh, wow, looking at all the damage, are you gonna be okay to clean up the glass, right? Then moving forward, I didn't realize how bad the earthquake was immediately. There was damage in the apartment, but then an hour later we had to evacuate because of the fissures in the building and whatnot. There was no water, there was no gas, there was no electricity for many days. And I told her that I had evacuated because of, what happened. And for all she knew, I was in the street. Right now, I get it. It's not her legal responsibility. Like, she doesn't owe me anything. It was, Mother Nature that created the earthquake. But not once did she offer me a shower or a sofa. And she lives in the really posh part of town. And on top of that, she couldn't even bother herself to call the building and get updates. And I was illegally there, which she told me after I made my reservation, that they're not allowed to do Airbnb. So, don't tell anybody. That really puts the guest in an awkward situation, particularly when the crisis hits. They don't know me there. She gave me like an email address that I could write to them and ask them for updates, which of course they didn't give to me because I don't belong there. She couldn't even bother herself to get information, right? And then at the very end of the stay, the whole last week there, I paid and didn't stay there. I ended up staying with a friend, which I was very, very blessed to have. And in the very end, she tells me, oh, I'm just not going to be able to meet you, which is fine. Often you don't meet Airbnb owners because, I've just been working so hard at the rescue dog mission and I just don't have time for anything else. That kind of narcissist is never going to change. If that kind of event didn't shake her up, if the fact that she had a guest there and the mirror falling and the evacuation, none of that changed her perspective whatsoever. She was still going with that narcissistic game. So the reality is, don't hang out with people like that. I didn't want to hang out with them. I didn't want to teach them the wrong of their ways and encourage them to do the right thing, because those people don't do the right thing. You're just going to waste your time and energy. You might as well just move on. So be grateful when people show you who they really are. Be grateful. No matter how much of an asshole they are, be grateful that that person is showing you who they are so that you can take the responsibility of getting out of there, of walking away from them and not wasting your time and energy around that person or trying to help that person to change. So I have a couple more, suggestions here for you around this idea of change and helping people to change. The first is that, Humans are afraid of change, right? We're all afraid of change. I'm afraid of change too. You know, I'm actively working on transforming myself. I'm still afraid of change. When change happens, it's scary. You know, it's also exciting in some ways, but it's really scary looking at the unknown and what's going to happen. It's uncomfortable, right? And the reality though is that the exceptional people are the ones who are actively working on changing themselves for the better, who have the self-awareness to recognize their shit and the humility to change it. Those are the exceptional ones. Those are the keepers, right? Those are the friends that are the keepers. Those are the people that you're dating and you see those qualities of self-awareness and the humility to make changes to better themselves. That's a keeper. So start seeing people for who they really are. Stop the fantasy of the potential, the illusion of the hope for change. Stop all of that and see the person for who they are right here, right now, and respect their choice to be who they are. Whether it's wrong or right, they have the choice to be who they are. You know, it's not on us to try to change that person, to even try to encourage them to do something different if they don't want to. Respect the fact that they are who they are. Don't hang out with them if you don't like them. Shine your light. It's important to shine your light, you know, and what happens is, like, as we each shine our light, in that illumination, other people have the opportunity to see new things about themselves, to make changes in their lives that maybe it hadn't occurred to them before, but maybe not. Maybe they don't change at all. Don't shine your light for the purpose of making someone else change. Shine your light because you want to shine your light. And maybe, just maybe, the people around you see themselves and something new in themselves. Live with other people. Live in community with other people. Share space with other people. Observe how they cook, how they eat, how they live, because you're going to learn so much. You're going to observe the way other people live, especially from other cultures, but even in your own culture. Everybody has different customs. We all grew up in different families and households, and we all have our own personalities, and you don't have to be exactly like other people, but just notice the way they do things, you know, and notice, oh, that's really interesting, like maybe I want to do this that way, and you can learn some really wonderful stuff. And the final advice that I have is, don't take on the responsibility of other people. Do not try to change them. Instead, work on you. We all have work to do at home. That's the reality. So focus on you. Get yourself out of the situation with somebody that you don't like, that you don't want to hang out with, that they're just not respectful to you, that you just can't live with the way they are right now. If they don't change, walk away from them. Don't hang out with those people, and really honor the people in your life who have that self-awareness to notice their stuff, and who have the humility to change themselves, to admit that they need to change, and then to go ahead and start making those changes actively. Those are the keepers. Those are the people that you want to keep in your life. I'm sending you all a big hug.